Hi, this is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace, Pollock. And typically, when I read off the topic, I usually say, haha, I think I know what we're talking about. But today, I have no idea. So this is going to be a lot of fun. It's compound one thing. So what is that thing?
So if I offered you $500,000 to guess what it was, what would you guess? I'm not saying I am offering you.
Boy, I thought maybe you won the lottery last night.
No.
Is it when we take one thought or one idea and we sort of explode it into a million pieces?
Not exploded.
Okay.
So let's dig in. Okay. So a lot of, I belong to lots of different groups and have belonged to lots of different groups. And we've had lots of goal setting sessions and approaches. And I've read a lot of books and listened to a lot of podcasts and so on and so on. But the one thing, there is a book called The One Thing, and there are a number of other books that talk about the compound effect that Darren Hardy promoted years ago, his book, Tiny Habits. We want a tiny thing. The 80-20 rule, focus on the thing that produces the 80% results, not the 80% that produces only the 20% or less. The deep work, like the knowledge sector in work is going to be mostly about knowledge work, which can only be done by, thinking. Some of it can be automated now that ChatGPT is out, etc. But it's just regurgitating stuff so far. It's not coming up with original ideas. So, and then the domino effect. I mean, all of these concepts kind of come together. Another one is Winning the Week by Demir and Carey Bentley. So the point of this focusing on the one thing that's going to move you forward the most, the one thing that's going to make X easier or eliminate the need to do it entirely. And we've brushed on this topic before, but it's really coming home to me. This is like a novel concept for me. I'm, one of the masters of the circus, with the plates spinning and spinning and think, oh, let's add another one I'm going to spin. And recently, following these concepts, actually, doing what I, promote, I have a foam board, a large foam board, and I had extra sticky notes, and I mapped out for the third quarter and a little bit into the fourth quarter, the big rocks, the big one things per quarter. And one of them is I want to take this one program, and I know it's a beastly amount of work. And it was a really sobering moment for me. And it was one of the inspirations for having this conversation and bringing back to this concept, because I can't do, if I want to do that program well, I can't do it and do my habitual thing, which is shoehorn other things in.
Right.
It's my tendency, like, okay, I'll figure out how I'm going to get it all done. I might not sleep for a week, but I'm going to put it in here. And it was such a great relief. And when I did that, I'm turning and looking at my phone board. It's not high tech, but I find it easier in many ways than a mind map.
Right.
And I have them kind of color coded. I'm not really a purist with these things, so I know I may sound like I'm really insanely organized and so on, but it's more of an approximation than anything. So this event starts the last week of September, and it goes, I think, to the middle of November.
Okay.
So I got that on there for the quarter, and then I had this other project that I want to get done. I have to get done before that starts. All right. And so then I had other things that I thought I would be working on. Why not? Well, I'm going down the path, might as well throw that in. And then when I started laying these out, I realized, darn it, I should follow the one thing. And what was the one thing? The one thing was this one program between now and the start of that one in September.
Okay.
And I have to put most of my time and focus on that. It's not that I'm not doing other things, but I'm not doing add-on projects. So having dumped that out, what do you think?
Well, I love the idea of the phone board. And like, as soon as you said it, I realized I'm a very visual person. And even though I use my computer, I have to jump from page to page looking for something.
Exactly.
And then I get totally confused. Now, wait a second. What am I doing? And so now I'm picturing a foam board, which I'm going to go out and purchase tomorrow, because I'm the same way. When I look at the calendar, I say, well, we have a recording from 8 to 9, but I need a little break after that. And so, I give myself a half hour and then I record again. But if I don't need that whole half hour, I start doing something else that overflows into the next time.
Yeah.
And I don't give myself that time to say, okay, I need to breathe. And last week and this week, as I took on this other project, when I look at the calendar, I have an appointment here at 10 and here at noon. But I wasn't taking into consideration my drive time.
Yeah, you'll just like, what was that old TV show? Just kind of think yourself and show up.
Yep. I Dream of Jeannie. Yeah, I wish I was her. I could, but here I was at my 10 o'clock appointment early. So in my mind, well, I'm early. This is going to work really great. And I went and took care of what I had to, and I was still running ahead of time. But I looked at my calendar and I thought, well, I've got all this extra time. I can do some phone calling here. And one call led into another. Before I realized it, I was going to be late for my next appointment.
And how often does that kind of thing happen?
Typically it doesn't, because I panic about time, but it's happening more now because I'm trying to fit too much into these little areas. But
which ones are more important in the bigger picture than others?
Well, and exactly. And my appointments were more important than those telephone calls I was making. So
I think we have a tendency, and I think a lot of the programs that people make available and all the, how to be more productive and get more done. Well, the fact of the matter is it isn't getting more done, it's getting the right things done. And as Peter Drucker said, it's the right things in the right way.
Yep.
Everything else is inefficient. So
well,
it's everything.
And as we talk about this, my husband needed some tools, computer tools and whatever, that are stored away in our garage. And he knew, I loved it because typically he doesn't think ahead like this, but he knew that he was going to have to take each of these cases down off the shelves, look through them one at a time to try to find these pieces and parts. And he was supposed to work somewhere today, and he actually realized yesterday, I can't do it all. And so he rearranged his work for today, and he methodically went through all the things he had to, because that was the most important. And so, it makes sense that he was going to initially try to squeeze it in after he, came home from work, being tired. He probably wouldn't have found the things that he found this morning.
Exactly. And, the whole idea is that we tend to have a culture, at least here in the US, of overcommitting, trying to, stuff all the things in there like a sausage. A lot of self-help experts, urge that as well. And the whole idea of going narrow rather than broad in terms of the things we commit to. In the life hack method, the authors of Winning the Week, Demir and Carey Bentley, talk about how important it is to take one ball down the field, score, then go get another ball and so on. Because if we're trying to get 5 or 6 balls down the field, we're probably not going to get there for any of them. We're going to come
Exactly.
up short. And I think we talked about that really recently, or I talked to somebody about that really recently. And the whole idea is that it makes us so reactive on so many fronts, because we'll probably have other obligations, family, particularly mothers of, children and so on. So those kinds of things can't be, sorry, I'm doing my one thing, you're just going to have to hold it there. I'm not going to feed you until such and such a time. But it can just give us pause for thought. And one of the other things we talked about not too long ago was the 168 hours in the week, which is
Right.
a really sobering thing. Like, oh yeah, I some of that I'm going to be sleeping, and so it's not. I don't have a full budget of 168 hours. So what's occurring to you when I remind you of that?
So, I'd been going to physical therapy 2 days a week, getting there on time, staying the whole time, getting back home, and everything was perfect. This past week, I only had to go one time. And when I went, I was sort of complaining about tightness and stiffness that I haven't had for a while. And she looked at me and she said, "So on Monday, did you take that hour to do your exercises?" And I thought back and I said, "No, because I was moving around, I was working, I was walking." She goes, "No, if you could take the time to drive over here, spend an hour in therapy, and drive home, you have time for 1 hour to do your exercises at home." And it was like, she's right. But I didn't see it that way because I was home. So I was doing all the other things.
Mhm, mhm. Well, and that Laura Vanderkam talks in 168 hours, she talks about one of the very busy, top-notch CEOs, female CEOs that she interviewed had her water heater broke. And so here she is, booked up to the eyeballs. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. Then the water heater broke, which, spilled water everywhere. And the cleanup crew had to come in. So it was about 7 hours arranging all of that. And she had to find the time.
Right.
Right. So it gets displaced. So if we can be thinking about those boundaries, and it's not that we can't do more than one thing in a day or a week, we just work on that one thing. And one of the other elements is, if you were to think about which of your activities are high value and which ones are shallow value. So Cal Newport in Deep Work talks about shallow work.
Hmm.
So what kinds of things do you do that are they don't necessarily produce any real return on your time investment?
Sitting here playing Mahjong to keep myself calm, which doesn't do it.
It doesn't make you
It
calm.
doesn't calm me down. But, I've tried to convince myself, hey, it's mindless, but it's not mindless. But, offhand, I know there are lots of things I do that are not top priorities and are things that don't have to be done on a daily basis. But I tend to do them because I had conditioned myself for years. You know, to have a clean house, you have to vacuum every day. To have a clean house, you have to put the dishes from the dishwasher away, as soon as the dishwasher goes off. Whereas I'm slowly starting to do things while I'm putting breakfast together, empty the dishwasher. Whereas instead of making it this separate time span of doing things, and it helps. But I still don't consolidate enough where I can at the end of the day say, hey, I really took time for me.
Yeah, so that has to be one of the big rocks to refer to Stephen Covey's material. Get those on the calendar first, because if you're not well, and you certainly know this from recent episodes, then everything has to come to a stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So one of the other points is to reverse engineer that the one thing to compound. And so to, we think about where we want to, what we want to achieve, the destination we want to arrive at, and then work it back to the present. What do I have to do? And Demir Bentley recently was talking about that might be a definite chief aim. And then he talked about the critical path to get there. And any goal or schedule or, a goal for a schedule is just a hypothesis. So if we come up with the plan that's most likely to get there, it's never a given, never guaranteed.
Right.
Then we can learn a lot from that. And then it makes it easier to say no. They call those leverage no's. No to this, no to that, because it just gobbles up too much time and attention and energy. How much does energy play into your thought processes when you're making your commitments?
I overthink things, and that's where my energy is. It's like I feel like I just have to, if I start a task, I have to complete it. And recently I have not taken the time to say, how important is this task or not? I've been more of a reactive person than being proactive.
And what do you think is contributing to that?
I really think a lot is after my accident, I kept thinking to myself, I'm going to be more intentional. And I am intentional, but I'm noticing everything rather than trying to zone in on really how I can take care of myself and make my business healthier and all my commitments healthier. But instead, what I started doing was I looked at the calendar and it was like, look at all these things I missed. Look at all these things I've had to reschedule. And I've just been doing it really sloppy. And so for those of you listening, I'm really sorry because I have to get better at this.
Well, and I think, given the fact that you had that accident and the stuff that followed it, I would hope that most people can understand that. It's not like you're just goofing off or a total flibbity gibbet. So in terms of thinking about how do you optimize your energy, what optimizes it?
Right now, nothing other than I think if I can take away from this that if I use my energy properly, meaning the 2 days a week, I must do my exercises, whether I'm at physical therapy or not. And this is a lifelong commitment. So I have to put that in there. Those are big rocks. My business is a big rock, but I have to start going through it and identifying what's the biggest rock there, and then basically work backwards. And I haven't been doing that. I've just been looking at everything as being important.
Yeah, and my big thing several years ago was anything that came to me, I saw it as an opportunity as a role, and I would sign up for it, or maybe I'll get this certification or that. And then I was in a coaching program, and we were buddied up with other people, and I had this really adorable woman from Texas with a really deep Texas accent that I'm going to try and mimic, but. So I was telling her I presented that as an issue for me. And she said after listening to the situation, she said, now, is it an opportunity or an offer? And it was like she broke a spell. So since then, I've been able to have that little fork in the road to say, oh, this is just an offer. I don't, it's something I can refuse. It's not always easy for me to do that, but I have a greater chance. So we're not asking for perfection. We're just asking for spiraling up.
Well,
But
and that's where my intentionality in the past week or two has become, and I realized this yesterday morning as I was getting ready to go to a training job. I was doing too many things at once in the kitchen, and I was dropping stuff all over the place. And I just stopped and I looked around, and, I heard it in my head saying, you dropped the knife because you weren't watching. You almost slipped because you poured water on the floor. And it was like, I could see it all. And it was like, you need to slow down. And the rest of the day, I did. I mean, training that normally takes me an hour, I was there for 2.5 because I wanted to make sure I was doing what I needed to do. But then I came home, and I will tell you that all just like went away. I saw all the bad things I was doing, but I wasn't stopping myself.
And those are like phantom symptoms. When somebody loses a limb, they still feel, that the limb is there. So I always think those, well, they call them phantom symptoms, but I think we have the same way with some of our habits and our thinking, that it takes a while for, actually for the brain to basically sweep up that old neural pathway and because we're going down another one. And it's not, again, perfection, it's just improvement. And then, BJ Fogg talks about celebrating when we do it that way. One of my big foibles, I guess you would say, is I have a 2-story house, and I tend to carry too many things up or down, and then inevitably something falls or it slips or, whatever. And I am constantly saying to myself, what are you thinking? You did it again, a little self-flagellation mentally. And, I'm thinking it's going to create less work, but it actually always results in more work.
Yeah.
That's a hard lesson for me to override.
Well, and I'm trying to learn that lesson with my cane, because the therapist said, you're ready to go without it, except when you go out of the house. And so I've convinced myself I don't need it in the house, but then I find myself making stupid movements. And it's like, is it that I don't need it? Do I, and I start like berating myself, like, you got to watch what you're doing. And I do. And it is a new habit. And for those of you who have never had an accident and don't know what it's like to have your foot feel like it's stuck on the floor, it can't move, that, it plays with your brain. So
that was really scary.
Yep. Well, another good conversation. I love it. And, we've missed a couple recording sessions, but we at least get it in so that our listeners can understand some of the points that we're talking about, and also to help me improve. So I appreciate it.
Well, and me, I have to, follow what I preach, right?
Absolutely. Well, have a great day, and thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Great. Good seeing you.
Bye-bye now.